This is ground zero for Colorado's most dangerous prisoners.
Things are coming at you 100 miles an hour.
Lifers, murderers, and rapists, they're dangerous to staff and other inmates.
He jerked my head over and sliced my throat.
A battleground where officers and inmates face off every day.
You never want the guards to see that you have feelings. You only want them to see hate and strength.
It only takes the one time for something really horrific to happen.
I had nightmares for about a week.
No one lets his guard down at Sterling Correctional. Sterling Correctional Facility. It's a fortress built to be escape-proof with a lethal electric fence. Designed to contain 2,500 inmates. Murderers, rapists, even cop killers. Sterling has more violent incidents than any other prison in Colorado. The daily battle for the officers to control some of the worst and keep them from busting out. The most disruptive inmates end up in a prison within a prison. ADSEG, administrative segregation. It's a new name for an old concept. Solitary confinement. 49-year-old Richard Schmidl has committed a whole range of serious crimes.
I have some aggravated armed robbery charges, kidnapping, and I ended up shooting a couple people.
His most recent, a series of armed home invasions in 2005 while strung out on meth.
Everything just kind of wound down to one night of police chase, and they considered me a habitual criminal because of my past offenses.
Now Schmidl is facing what they call the boat. A boatload of time inside.
I ended up receiving 13 consecutive life sentences, so I know that I'll never walk out of these bars again.
Schmidl is a white supremacist, and he's proud of it.
I don't associate with other races. Race mixing never was acceptable in my life, and never would be. And I just think that things a little out of hand out there.
Schmidl's white supremacist activities here have led him to ADSEG.
Living in ADSEG is like, it's kind of like a living hell. You never really see anybody. Sometimes you speak to somebody for months through a vent, and you don't even know what they look like.
For 23 hours out of every day, he's locked down in a cell, alone.
Watch a lot of TV. It kind of becomes a babysitter. It's really not much of a life.
Schmidl's been here for 7.5 months, and he's getting desperate.
That's not a life that I would wish upon anybody. You make the best of it.
He wants to get back to the main line, general population. But he'll have to prove to the warden he's ready to leave his racist activities behind. It's 12 o'clock Monday.
Fill it in. These 2 rows, gentlemen.
200 inmates are filing in for lunch.
I'm telling you, if you know something's wrong, then that process is there, correct?
You know what's wrong, and you let me get this.
It's always a challenge for the officers to handle a group that outnumbers them 100 to 1.
I'm telling you, keep your hands down.
It's a huge spectrum of criminals, including one that almost everyone knows. He's just returned to general population after 7.5 years in ADSEG. Inmate Joel Stovall, nickname Sniper. He may look ordinary, but he and his identical twin brother took part in one of the most infamous shootouts in Colorado history.
I got 365,782 days left, life plus 896 years. I was incarcerated for killing 1 cop, paralyzing another, and shooting at and injuring about 17 others, and armed robbery, because I took someone's truck.
According to Stovall, it all started because he was afraid of the neighbor's dog.
The neighbors never locked up their dog, and so their dog came out to attack me. I pull out my gun, the dog doesn't leave. I cock the gun, still doesn't leave. Fire 8 rounds into it, it's still standing. Yeah, and I end up putting the dog down.
When the police arrived to take Joel into custody, things went downhill fast. Michael Stovall objected to the way his twin brother was being handled, and one arrest turned into 2.
As he was putting me into the cop car, my brother tells him, "Don't hurt my brother." This cop took offense at that. He slammed my brother's head into the edge of the parked car, cuffed him up, and dragged him back to the back of the cop car.
They were locked up side by side in the back of the police car when Joel's brother Michael decided to take things into his own hands.
He's cuffed behind his back. He starts reaching around into his pocket, pulling out his keys. Now, we had done security work, so we had handcuff keys. So my brother tells him basically, pull over or else, you know. He gave him fair warning multiple times.
What the police officer didn't realize was that Michael still had a .40 caliber pistol in his pocket, and he was prepared to use it.
Pop, 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 pop. That was it.
At Sterling, both brothers were placed in ADSEG as threats to the officers. Now, 7 years later, Joel's been allowed into general population because of a perfect prison record, but only on a trial basis. If Joel can stay on his best behavior, the warden will consider releasing his brother from solitary as well. Some aggressive inmates are struggling to pull their lives together. Like John Brogan, half Japanese, half Native American, and, until recently, all trouble. A longtime drug dealer and serious strong-arm man, Brogan has been in and out of prison his whole life.
I was a kid and got involved in a second-degree assault. I got attacked by a couple of guys. I ended up hurting one of the guys real bad. Went to prison for my first time at the age of 20 years old and came out of prison worse than I had gone in. And then shortly thereafter got involved in methamphetamine distribution and manufacturing. And I'm currently serving a 16-year sentence for manufacturing methamphetamines.
Brogan had a reputation as a hard case in his early years in prison, as Warden Kevin Milliard remembers all too well.
I believe the first time I came in contact with offender Brogan was about 22 years ago. He was a young knucklehead. I used to be the thorn in the warden's side long before he became a warden of this facility. And I'm talking like 1987 when I had my first run-in with him. He was one of the lieutenants at the other facility I was at. He was not the most pleasant offender to be around, had zero respect for authority, and we very rarely seen eye to eye.
This time, the warden noticed something different about Brogan.
He says, man, your attitude's changed a lot. You know, you've changed. I said, I'm getting old. You know, I'm not the wild kid that you remember, you know.
The warden picked Brogan out for a special new program, training dogs.
Yep. Let's go. Easy. Let's go.
In the Canine Companion program, inmates take abandoned animals and turn them into service dogs and good pets. The prisoners know that if they do well, it improves their chances to get parole.
Let's go.
That's Brogan's hope, but he knows the program is demanding and inmates often fail. Above all, he'll need to control his anger. Brogan has been in ADSEG twice for assaults in the past 2 years. Now, he's trying to turn his life around.
I'm going to see the parole board again in January, and just trying to stay prepared and keep myself busy.
Brogan could be free in a few months if he can just stay out of trouble.
Hey, let's go, man. Move back up.
In the past 10 years, the state of Colorado has seen a rash of prison breaks. This is Sterling Correctional Solution. Convicts call it the kill fence. A 1.25 miles of high-voltage electrical fencing that surrounds the prison. It's the only perimeter like it in the state.
The first time somebody touches it, it'll knock them down. The next time it's touched, it's a lethal dose of electricity. You just don't know if you're the first person to touch it or the second.
The fence can deliver 4,000 volts, a shock no human will survive. No one knows the importance of that fence more than Intelligence Officer Vasquez.
This is Unit 1 right here. From here, it curves around to the other side of the facility.
It's 1 p.m., and Vasquez is riding the perimeter. It's his job to stay on top of the hard cases and the gangbangers who might try to breach this fence and bust out.
We are one of the ones that identifies the security threat groups. We are the ones that monitor their behavior.
Vasquez's team is tracking something suspicious. Black and white prisoners have been seen talking together, which almost never happens. Intel is wondering if it might be a sign of drug dealing, or even an escape attempt. To find out, they're monitoring the yards, the mailroom, and control center.
We have cameras, we have audio, the SIP system, which is the inmate phone system. We're able to monitor those. Just being out there, getting a feel for what's going on in the facility.
There has never been an escape from Sterling, but that doesn't mean no one has ever tried. One remarkable attempt came not long ago in ADSEG. Officer Henry was working the rounds with the afternoon lunch service, making her way with the meal cart by herself.
I had started over in our D pod, and I was working my way around, so I was the only one in the pod when I got to A.
She went from cell to cell, putting the tray in the food slot.
And when I got there, the offender asked if he could have another minute because he wanted to put his pudding into a cup.
Surveillance footage shows what happened next.
His tray slot popped open, and within about 4 seconds, he was out and on his feet. I took off running to the main slider to try to get out.
The 6-foot prisoner had crawled out the food slot and was chasing Officer Henry up the stairs. Luckily, she had her pepper spray in hand.
And then he had come towards me again, and that's when I had sprayed him with OC and cuffed him.
Afterwards, they shrunk the tray slot and fastened it to eliminate other escapes.
5 minutes to count.
But Officer Henry felt the after effects.
I had nightmares for about a week. Each time the ending would worsen. It made me realize that anything can happen at any time, and you always have to keep your guard up.
Michael Stovall isn't about to crawl out of a food slot, but he does want out of ADSEG. He's been locked away in solitary for more than 7 years for his part in a cop killing. If his brother Joel can do okay in general population, Michael might be allowed out next. But he's considered potentially unstable. He was the initial shooter in the confrontation with the police.
They threw me over the trunk of the car. They didn't bother to search me. I had 2 guns on me. I had my baby Eagle, and I had my, no, I think I had my baby Eagle in the left, and my, I can't remember, a little 32 on my right that I had just recently bought. In the car ride over, I asked him to set me and my brother free. He chose not to do that. I slipped the cuffs, and I had my baby Eagle in my hand, and I pulled it out, and I put it up next to his head. And I asked him a final time, I said, please pull over, you're kidnapping us. I felt like there was no alternative. At that point, I felt that my life and my brother's life depended on me bringing the situation to as rapid a stop as I could. And I admit, I told him that I was gonna shoot him, and he didn't listen, and I shot him once in the head. And then he slumped over, and I shot him a couple more times.
In the end, after a chase and a shootout, the toll was 1 officer dead, 1 paralyzed, and 17 shot-up police cars. Now, Michael Stovall is locked away for the next 1,232 years.
It's 24-hour-a-day lockdown, 365 days a year. The only time I ever go out is I go to my Bible study once every 2 weeks.
With 20 life sentences ahead of him, the only question is whether Michael Stovall will ever make it into the prison's general population. Richard Schmidl, in for aggravated robbery and assault, faces a similar dilemma. He too wants out of ADSEG. He's deeply concerned about his family, 2 sons and a daughter now 16.
You know, being back here in ADSEG, it's really hard to maintain any kind of relationship, you know, with your family.
He won't get face-to-face visits with them until he's let out of ADSEG. For now, he must make do with a call. He gets just 4 a week to parent long distance.
Hey, Pumpkin. How are you? God, I couldn't wait to call you. Couldn't wait to hear. Hey, guess what? I got the picture from Lori from your MySpace. That's really not a picture I want on MySpace. You in that blue dress with the wild makeup. What's up with that? I think it was his last birthday. You know, turning 49 and being back there, and the visits behind the glass and some things. I had to really take a look at myself and what's important to me in my life. Let me talk to her real quick before my phone shuts off. I miss you, and I love you. Right now, it's kind of a crucial time in my life that, and theirs, that I need them and they need me.
Schmidl has big news for his family.
Is he?
The warden has agreed to give him a hearing about getting out of ADSEG.
I got some good news. If everything goes right, I have a warden's review in 2 weeks, and then I should be back. I know, I'm excited about it. I didn't want to tell you, and I didn't want to get your hopes up in case I didn't get it. This review is important to me, to make it work and to find a way to live out there on the yard. Well, you know that you're my whole life and you're everything in the world.
Schmidl will have to convince the warden and his staff that he can live trouble-free with other prisoners. On the other end of the facility, in the minimum security wing, Brogan is working his way towards parole with a dog at his side.
This is Bella Boo. She's half Great Dane and half boxer. Good girl. She's an attention hound. She loves to be petted. Kisses. Our program gives people the opportunity to, rather than to have to put their animals down or just leaving them, dumping them somewhere, they're actually able to surrender the dogs to our program.
Some of these surrender dogs have been mistreated or abused or even left for dead by their former owners.
Bella.
Now they're being rehabilitated and trained for new owners. Bella was one of these rescued animals, a strong-willed dog that no one wanted to adopt. Now, Brogan is working hard to get her on track.
Bella, Bella, jump. Very good girl. Bella, jump. Jump, jump. Oh, good girl.
With his record, any trouble might prevent Brogan from getting parole.
We can't get write-ups. I can't even get a minor infraction. You know, you get in trouble, you lose your job.
Out on the yard, the dogs like Bella are put through their paces, taught to obey a series of exacting commands.
The initial reaction was, it'll never work.
Very good.
The animals are going to be misused. It can't happen. These individuals are violent, and it has just the opposite effect with offenders.
That's it. Speak, Terry. Say speak. No, speak. Never in a million years would I thought that I'd be doing time in this system here in Colorado, and and training dogs while I was doing that time, you know.
It's a second chance for Brogan and the dogs.
I kind of look at some of these dogs that come into our program are a lot like the inmates that come here. Just the worst of the worst. Can't get along anywhere in society.
Like the dogs, Brogan says he's been changed as well.
I know, I've been kind of a meathead, and just, you know, people see my demeanor the way I used to be in the past, and it kind of turned them off from me. Good girl. And to be able to be in the dog program, I'm reteaching myself how to deal with people and daily life in general.
Brogan will only get 4 to 6 weeks to work with Bella. It's just a short time to bond and get it right. But not everyone is changing here at Sterling. Using audio surveillance, Officer Vasquez and the intel team has picked up more disturbing information. It looks as if a plan is in the works, a plan for a group escape. The staff is worried that this is one escape attempt that could turn violent. Sunday afternoon at Sterling Correctional. When inmates act out here, the staff deals with it swiftly and firmly. ADSEG, Unit 5.
Earlier this evening, offender
Shift Commander Wingert is preparing the 4th cell team to handle an emergency.
The offender has now placed his
An inmate is barricading himself inside his cell.
And has refused all orders.
They strap on the Kevlar and head out. Prison cameras record the event. The doctrine: respond with overwhelming force.
Mr. Red, this is your final chance. You need to come to the door, remove what you have in front of the window, and tough up. Do you understand? Do you have anything to say?
Tear gas is pumped into the cell to control the agitated prisoner. Within less than a minute, it starts to work. The inmate is strapped down to the chair for maximum restraint. The mask controls him from spitting or biting as he's moved to a new high-control cell. In the next unit over, Michael Stovall believes that after 7 years in ADSEG, he'll be getting out soon. But it won't be according to any plan of the warden or the inmates.
Now I've learned a lot in the Bible, and I truly, honestly believe that God is going to destroy the system in just a handful of years.
His twin brother Joel knows all about the stresses of ADSEG.
It's almost like you die and everyone you know dies. They die to you because you can't talk to them, you can't see them, you can't hug them, you can't love them.
Thanks.
And you also grieve yourself a little bit because it's a concrete coffin. And I've heard other people describe it as being buried alive.
For the next months, his brother Michael will bide his time and work out the exact moment of his escape.
According to my calculations, and I could be flawed, but according to my calculations, what keeps me going every day, I calculate that as of today, there will be 1,383 days maximum left before God must destroy the system.
ADSEG officers handle the most volatile prisoners, but all Sterling staff are careful.
Thank you.
There were over 24 officer assaults here in 2007. And everyone remembers one of the most disturbing incidents, when 2 officers had their throats slashed. Surveillance cameras captured the events.
It was early in the morning, 7:30 a.m., and that's when the fenders come off the northwest yard and they entered the program's building.
Veteran officers are manning the security hub, but even the most experienced can be caught off guard. Officer Stanley is approached by an inmate. Just off camera, bottom left. Inadvertently, he lets the inmate get too close.
I thought he was going to ask me a question. Next thing I know, he sliced my throat with a razor.
Stanley can't believe his throat has been slashed. Officer Tramp on the guard desk is taken by surprise as well.
Then he came around behind me, and that's when I felt like somebody hit me.
Tramp has been stabbed 3 times by the inmate's homemade shiv.
He swung that blade at me 2 or 3 different times.
The officers now confront a life and death situation. An out-of-control prisoner, off his meds, intent on finishing them both off. Cornered, the inmate threatens to take his own life, then attacks again. Despite his wounds, Stanley pulls out his pepper spray, but the inmate keeps coming.
I don't think anybody realized that we had really been cut at that time, and that's when I noticed I had this blood running down all over my shirt.
Associate Warden John Chapdelaine sees the commotion at the end of the hallway.
I came up from behind the offender. I put the offender in a shoulder pin, and I took him to the ground.
Once the inmate is subdued, the staff can see the damage he's done.
They were really hurt. The blood all over the shirts and I knew it was face, neck at that time.
I had a cut on my throat, missed my windpipe by about 1/8 of an inch.
I had one across the front along the jawbone, the one that was the deepest. I think I had 60 stitches.
Some officers quit prison work the next day. But Tramp and Stanley were back on the job just 2 days later.
You can't let the inmates win. You got to show them who's boss.
But swift action brought the best of all outcomes. No staff hurt, no inmates killed, and order restored on the yard, at least for now. The intel team's investigations are ongoing, and the ringleaders face a stiff series of penalties.
These 7 suspects are basically looking at being placed in administrative segregation.
But with all the unrest at Sterling, no one's status is secure, and everyone's future is up in the air. Back in the ADSEG wing, inmates Stovall and Schmidl are both hoping to move out of their solitary cells.
There's a lot of individuals that have been back in ADSEG a lot longer than me that I've seen them come out of ADSEG, and I've seen how much it's affected them, how withdrawn and quiet they are.
But today, the only resident that's walking out the prison doors is a dog. After 5 weeks together, it's time for Brogan to turn over Bella to her new owner.
Bella's gonna go home Tuesday, and I get to do her go home with her. I'll take the dog to the people out in our visiting room, introduce them to her, and introduce myself, and then I get to show them how to give the commands that she knows.
Brogan wants to be careful that neither he nor the dog puts a foot wrong.
Bella?
He's been working with Bella round the clock to have her ready for her new family.
I never would imagine when I first got her that she would be able to do all the things that she's learned to do.
He wants to make sure she'll never be cast off again.
Bella, sit. That's a good girl. Sit.
Go up to her and say hello. Hi, baby. She should
For the new owner, Bella is a great surprise.
Says hello.
The new owner is thrilled.
Yeah. She likes to have her tummy rubbed, obviously.
Brogan has mixed emotions. Watching a companion go out the door.
Okay.
This can be the trickiest moment for the inmate handlers. The moment they may be most likely to fall back into trouble. there alone again, behind bars.
I'm just so used to having a dog, and I'm so used to having him because we sleep right next to each other that with not having a dog, I have this gap in my day, you know?
With no dog, Brogan's just a prisoner like any other. The challenge, to hold himself together for a few more weeks until the next dog arrives.
I have felt personally that you have it out for me and a personal vendetta against me. I mean, whether or not what it is.
How long were you on the yard before I even said anything to you, other than what's up?
It's that what's up, because I know that there's a hidden meaning in it. No, I know that we, for some reason, I've tried to get along with you, and I've tried to be honest with you whenever we've spoke. But every time that I do speak to you, it's like you make me feel like I'm lying out of every word out of my mouth, and that's not the case.
Because a lot of times I'm not going to ask you a question that I don't know the answer to.
So anytime we release anybody out of administrative segregation, you're rolling the dice, hoping that that individual stays true to their word, has learned their lesson, and tries to become a better person. You understand that the bulldog is still going to be looking over your shoulder.
I do appreciate this opportunity very much, and I know that I let you down as far as...
I just believe that everybody can change. To what degree is the question.
I am getting this opportunity. They gave me a positive board and review.
Yeah,
I know this is a progressive move.
Good luck to you.
And try to find a life out there on the main line.
Coming in here and blowing smoke, you know, saying that he's going to change and he's going to do this and do that. He's already had that opportunity to prove that, and to me, he hasn't.
On top of everything else, readjustment to the yard won't be easy for Schmidl.
Hopefully you do prove me wrong. I think he'll be back.
I think that I've reprioritized my life now. I really want to try to be close to my family and my kids, and I'm going to do everything that I can to make that happen.
Meanwhile, Michael Stovall still remains in ADSEG. So far, his brother Joel has avoided trouble in general population. But Sterling's staff is treating Michael's case with caution.
I wish things were different. You know, I really wish the whole world was different. I wish that night had have happened different. But I think more positive has come from it. The negative, providing God goes ahead and sweeps away the system pretty soon, you know? I try to watch the news so I can keep up with the way the world's moving to see if it's gonna pop off pretty soon, you know?
Provided he and his brother can stay incident-free, Michael may well be out in general population in a matter of weeks. Across the Sterling campus on the East Yard, John Brogan has made it through a lonely week without Bella. Now, he is getting a new dog to train. If he succeeds with her too, it could really help with his coming parole hearing.
For each and every dog I get, it's like I'm like a little kid opening a Christmas present when I get a new dog. This is Abby. She's a 6-month-old Australian. Abby? Abby? Come sit. Good girl. It's amazing to see the transformation that some of these dogs go through. I go through the same type of transformation, you know.
Brogan's meeting with the parole board is coming soon. He hopes they'll realize how much he's changed. He's made a plan for the future.
I would like to break into training dogs on the streets. And most importantly, training other people to train dogs is really the goal.
For the first time in years, Brogan has hopes for a new life.
When he gets out this time, I don't think we'll see Brogan back in prison. And I hope not. I mean, I wish him the best.
It doesn't matter how much you want, how badly you want to work, how badly you want to stay out of prison. And I've come to a point now where I'm making the right choices.
At Sterling Correctional, there's only one way out, and that's to do your time. For everyone else, the electric fence is always on.
Can you get inside, please? Damn shot, Brad. You're trying to break my arm. Don't let my hand go.
brother's leg. Stop pulling away from me.
Over 1,300 inmates are brought into Hillsborough County Jail every week.
Place your hands on the counter, back your feet, and spread your feet apart.
Central booking. The first point of contact in the often violent face-off between deputies and inmates.
Homicidal?
Many are angry and out of control, drunk or high, and ready to fight. There were over 24 attacks on officers at Hillsborough last year.
Come sit over here. Sir. Sir. You need to sit over here. Listen to my instructions.
Nobody knows that better than Sergeant Onan, a 17-year veteran.
Everybody's coming in off the street intoxicated and or with drugs or weapons. They do not want to be here. They're aggravated and they want to retaliate. I would be lying if I said that I've never been scared. I have been, but I think that I try not to ever let them see that.
Sergeant Onan is committed to public service, despite the risks. She has been assaulted repeatedly on the job.
I have had fracture on my nose. I was slammed headfirst into a steel vestibule door. He lost his pants. A corneal abrasion from getting punched in the face. Bruises head to toe, knee injury, ankle injury. Yeah, this way, sit down.
Tonight, an inmate arrested in an assault decides to act out.
Siéntate ahí tranquilo, por favor. Por favor, siéntate ahí tranquilo. We're going to the holding cell.
He is placed in a holding cell until he cools off.
Kneel down.
The inmate must be checked closely for contraband, for drugs and weapons.
Last week, one of my intake deputies found a taser disguised as a cell phone. That could have caused some damage. Put your hand on your head. Do not move it from your head until we exit the cell. Keep your hand on your head. Don't move. Stay on the ground until we exit the cell. Do not move from the ground.
Onan carries only one weapon.
I am armed with taser. I've used it only once.
Yeah, you can move.
Sergeant Onan knows all too well what happens when an inmate becomes violent. One night, she came very close to losing her fingers.
It was a combative female, very small girl, about 100 pounds. And as I opened the holding cell door, two of my deputies were holding on to her, and she was restrained. And when I grabbed it, that's at the same exact moment when she kicked it. And it trapped my hand in between the door and the door frame. And it crushed 3 of my fingers. I was wearing Kevlar gloves, so when I keyed the door, I had my gloves on. So my fingers were saved, but I've had several surgeries on my hand. So she got a 5-year sentence in prison for that. You know, I still don't have full range of movement, and every morning when I wake up, I remember Melissa.
22-year-old inmate Chris Trott has a reputation as a difficult inmate ever since he was a juvenile in this jail.
It started as an authority thing. I kind of didn't like a lot of deputies.
I used to be that person who didn't care. It was just like, I'm going to do whatever I want, and they're not going to do anything to me. What can they possibly do? Send me to lockdown, and I'll get out in 30 days. I've been that guy who starts the problem and makes them call for backup.
Trott is at Hillsborough for violating probation on an armed grand theft auto conviction. He faces anywhere from several years to life behind bars, depending on the judge.
Now I'm in here fighting for my life, and I realize that I should have stopped a long time ago.
Trott knows this jail well. He's been in and out of it since he was only a teenager.
My first arrest was for grand theft motor vehicle when I was 14 years old. I'm now 22 years old, so I've been doing this for 8 years now, altogether.
Chris Trott seems personable starting off, but he tries to manipulate the system to get anything possible.
It must be my face. I got an award-winning face.
According to Deputy Johnson, Trott has long had trouble with contraband, from illegal food to drugs.
If you look at what he actually does, what he actually has in possession, it's not that big of a deal, but he manipulates the system and causes more problems than most other inmates do.
Hello?
Hey, Mama.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
He says for the first time, he's trying to walk the straight and narrow for his father, mother, and sister, as much as himself.
I'm tired of letting them down. I keep letting them down, and eventually they're going to give up on me, and I don't want them to give up.
He also wants to stay out of lockdown, what he calls the box.
getting tired of going to the box. I've only been to the box one time since I've been here right now. But in the past, I did 6 months in the box, 30 days in the box, 45 days in the box, 60 days in the box, and the box gets old quick. Every day I lay in my room and I think about it, I'm like, it's time to stop. I mean, you gotta stop sometime. It's time to grow up.
Trot will be seen as a problem until he can prove that he's turned himself around. Unfortunately, he still likes to break the rules. Hillsborough is a sprawling operation with 2 separate facilities down the road from each other and over 4,000 inmates.
Gentlemen, it's chow time.
Many of the pods here contain up to 72 inmates and usually only one officer who sits at a desk inside the unit, unprotected by bars or doors. It's called direct supervision, according to Intel Officer Master Deputy Gray.
In direct supervision, we are able to view everything in that pod, be it the doors, the housing, the whole 9 yards.
And down the line up, single file, one behind the other.
The philosophy behind it is we have our fingers on the pulse of that pod. We know everything that's going on.
What? 70? Where'd you get that? Is that your lottery numbers or what?
And while it works well most of the time, it also makes the deputy more vulnerable to assault.
Ladies, close cell 2 over, please, so I can see the corner over there.
Deputy Garcia, a 5-year veteran, is working today in the Women's Direct Supervision Pod. In charge of 62 inmates out of their cells for most of the day.
It's all about the control and the safety of everybody involved, and as long as you maintain that, you'll be fine.
It's a yes, ma'am, and I suggest you come downstairs right now. When you are done with your shower, then you go straight to that cell and you make that bed the way you know you're supposed to.
According to Garcia, it's all about respect on both sides.
Here's all. Do we need a trip to the holding cell, ma'am? It's a place you haven't been in a while? Okay.
That goes right along with having to create a relationship with these inmates in this pod. You have to build a level of respect with them so that you can gain the respect from them.
It doesn't always work. Right now, Garcia needs to deal with a disruptive young inmate who has been placed in a holding cell.
She came out of 1 Alpha this afternoon, very disruptive, would not go to her cell when she was ordered to. She did not want to be in the cell with the inmate that was housing with her. We can't just submit to the idea that she just wants her own cell or that she gets to pick the inmate that she wants to bunk with. That's not an option.
I'm not going in the cell with this lady, man. I can't stand her. Why it has to be like so difficult, I don't know.
You're making it difficult.
I can't stand her.
You're making it
She snores and she sings.
You don't get to pick your roommates. This is jail. It doesn't work that way. You're gonna sleep where you're told to sleep.
I'm not sleeping.
You don't get to pick your place. You don't get to pick your bed. You don't get to pick your roommates.
I'm not sleeping in there with her.
So we go through the measures that we have to take to see if she at this point will listen to what the deputy's orders are.
Don't be foolish now.
I'm not going in there.
Get up. Get up.
Get up.
Get up. Get up. Get you up. Now we take a look at you. Three cups again.
Got testimony.
Why are you being foolish?
I would not necessarily say that she was giving us a problem where we had to use any type of force. Handcuffing her was enough.
You're making this way harder than it has to be.
Because I don't want to go in there? Is it that serious?
It is that serious when there's nowhere else to put you, so you want to continue to make this complicated.
That's all it is, but I don't want to be in there with her.
You don't get to decide that. You don't get to pick.
The inmate will now be put in the hole, solitary confinement, and lose her privileges.
Everything will be taken from her. No phone calls, only outside rec for an hour a day. No canteen. At least for 2 weeks, we'll give her a really good idea of that maybe not doing what the deputy says isn't the way to go.
Deputies even faced the threat of lethal violence from outside. Just a few weeks earlier, Deputy Garcia was in charge of a male lockdown pod, which contained an accused double cop killer named Dante Morris.
We're currently housing Dante Morris, a very high-profile inmate.
Dante Morris is charged with gunning down 2 police officers who stopped him for a routine traffic violation. A A few weeks after Morris's arrest, Garcia received an outside call at the jail from what appeared to be an insurance company. It wasn't.
About 12:50 Thursday afternoon, I received a threatening phone call that came through the jail. They stated that it was a business call. I repeatedly asked who I was speaking with.
The caller said he was a friend of Dante Morris.
He stated I would know exactly who he was when he killed me.
The jail went on high alert, and Garcia was carefully monitored by undercover officers outside.
We at that time determined that round-the-clock surveillance and security of my home, me and my family, was necessary.
There have been no additional incidents so far.
If you thought about it for too long, it could probably get to you. It doesn't, for me. I get more angry at the threat than I do fearful. I feel like I have a lot of support working for the sheriff's office.
Garcia refuses to let the threat stop her, but threats can quickly turn to violence. Hillsborough County Jail takes every precaution to keep their deputies and inmates safe. Sometimes inmates explode with rage and violence. Deputy Garcia has witnessed it close up. She was at the jail several months earlier when a veteran officer, Deputy Moon, was attacked in the mental health pod.
Deputy Moon was a fantastic deputy. Being a veteran deputy, maintained his pod very well. The inmate definitely was in crisis. He had received some information, I believe, coming back from court, and it was time to lock down for lunch. And he took every opportunity that he could to lash out at Deputy Moon.
Deputy Moon was at the desk. He didn't see the inmate come around the side until it was too late. He was trapped in his chair.
The chair was extremely difficult to get out of. It was on wheels.
Deputy Moon was on the verge of being choked to death, according to Deputy Gray.
The inmate was behind him, was able to literally put him in a chokehold that had Deputy Moon probably in the last seconds of his life choking the life out of him. He had that kind of grip.
It was Deputy Moon's trustees actually came to his aid.
The inmates knocked the attacker and Deputy Moon to the ground and pried his arms off the officer's throat. Another inmate called for help.
Fortunately, some of these guys have been back and forth to jail a few times and had a definite good rapport with Deputy Moon.
It was Deputy Moon's commitment to the inmates that saved his life.
The other inmates were able to subdue the suspect and get him out of the pod. But if it wasn't for those 4 inmates, Deputy Moon would have been with us today. And the reason they did that was the respect that they had for him. Without that respect, they might have not ever intervened.
Deputy Moon survived the attack with minor injuries, though he retired not long after. As one of the 3 intel officers, Master Deputy Gray is responsible for preventing violence against deputies and inmates.
The biggest part of our job is the safety and security of our inmates and our deputies. And if that's stopping contraband coming in, if it's weapons, if we could save a life, that's our job.
In just the last few weeks, both weapons and drugs have been found. There are gaps in security which Gray needs to close.
Contraband and shakedowns and constant monitoring of contraband in our facility is 24/7, 365 days a year. That's something we deal with daily.
A variety of deadly homemade weapons have been confiscated from inmates.
This was found, and it looks like a normal book, but the officer was diligent enough to go through it, and what he found was it had been carved out page by page. And what it was concealing was a toothbrush fastened with 2 razor blades, one on each side. A thread was used, probably out of one of the bed sheets, and it was affixed to the toothbrush. All of a sudden, you got an easy cutting instrument for cutting a deputy or another inmate. They're very intelligent. They've got nothing but time on their hands. You know, when we do 12 hours, they do 24. It's a constant battle.
One inmate just came from state prison, where he's doing hard time for murder.
Give me his face sheet is done. Put it out to me over here.
25-year-old Chadwick Thomas spent 4 years at Hillsborough Jail awaiting trial on the murder charge. He pleaded no contest and got sent to the pen for 25 years.
I spent 5.5 years waiting to go to trial and fighting and process of going to court and back to court. And I pleaded guilty and no contest and accepted the plea of 25 years.
In state prison, Thomas met guys who would never see freedom again.
Going to prison, your first thoughts is how you can get out. The best way, how you can find your way to get yourself out of it. Because everybody, it's the people with 3 and 4 life sentences there, they ain't never leaving. And I got 25 years, I got a day, but it's a long day, but I got a day. It's some people that don't have days. So I thank God I got a day.
Once inside, Thomas realized 25 years in the pen is a long time. He's come back to appeal his conviction.
This ain't what it is. I'm too young for to be locked up all my life.
Thomas is glad to be away from state prison for a few weeks.
You know you at a place where it's people who really did their crime or really killed somebody, so you're not always comfortable. You're comfortable at a certain extent. All right, I'm all right, but I know that I'm in a place where it's like what they say, vultures. You know what I'm saying? You're surrounded by vultures, scavenging.
Unlike his earlier time at Hillsborough, Thomas will be locked down by himself all day, every day, except for 3 hours a week, since now he's a convicted murderer.
Chadwick's in isolation. He's here for first-degree murder. Obviously, if we're not careful with him and he doesn't think things are going to go well in court for him and he sees the opportunity to escape, then he can do that. But he won't do it on our watch.
It's not what Thomas expected. For her own safety and theirs, Deputy Garcia tries to stay attuned to the shifting moods of the prisoners. One of her inmates, Amber Tackett, has gotten some bad news. Tackett, a drug user convicted of trafficking, has done 8 months at Hillsborough. She just completed a mandatory 3-month drug program.
Because the charges were drug-related, they ordered me to take a substance abuse program, which is a 3-month program here. It's very effective. It's scary, but I've got a plan, thank God for that. So I'm gonna try everything that I can to stay out of here. That was the last thing I expected to hear.
She's ready to go home and turn her life around. But there's a problem. She's wanted in Tennessee for violation of probation. She was hoping that her time at Hillsborough would count.
Well, I have 8 months in here, and then I think I had a couple months in up there, so I was hoping maybe that time would be credited, but I was facing going to prison for a number of years on the violation in Tennessee. So I didn't know what was going on. I was just hoping for the best.
Now, Tackett may be looking at years in state prison.
We found out that there was a hold for Tennessee. So her class graduated, her class got to go home, they got to be released, and she stayed.
It sucks getting to watch everybody else walk out the door and knowing. And then today I was just like wondering, I didn't know how long I was gonna have to sit here, how long I'd be waiting for them to come and get me.
Tackett has turned to Deputy Garcia to help her find out what's going on.
She asked me the day if I would call inmate records and see how things were going.
She was just supposed to call me and review the information in the file so that I could pass on the information to the inmate.
Some information as to how long extradition takes and if they had heard from Tennessee.
Yes. Thank you.
Very soon, Tackett will know if she's going to prison in Tennessee and for how long. At Hillsborough, central booking is the front line in the fight against disruptive and violent inmates. Intake is the main source for drugs and weapons that later surface in the jail. Sergeant Onan and her team carefully search every inmate, then book them whether they like it or not.
Where you going? Where you going? Listen to me. You walk straight ahead to where those chairs are at. Stop the attitude here and now. You just have to be open to experiencing something new every night. It's never the same thing. Just keep on your toes and be vigilant, and always expect something to go bad so that you're prepared. You're gonna hurt yourself. Don't keep doing that. You're gonna hurt yourself. If they're under the influence of drugs and alcohol, I have seen them kick the glass out of the holding cells. Is that open?
Yes. Look,
Tonight, police bring in a seriously angry inmate who's been busted on an assault charge. She is out of control from the start. Onan and her officers move her into a holding cell and take her to the floor. Sergeant Onan removes her jewelry and any other potentially harmful items.
You know what? Stop, sir. Do not pull away from me. Do not pull away from me. I said, ask me to stop. Come on back. Keep your hand there until we get out of the cell. I just want to get all keep your hand there.
Onan quietly points her taser, just in case.
Do not move from there. Get into the cell.
Its red dot is visible on the inmate's shirt. The inmate will be processed once she sobers up.
Another happy customer.
Sergeant Onan is just glad a violent confrontation was avoided. One inmate at Hillsborough is so unhappy that he's turned the violence against himself. Inmate Chadwick Thomas is at Hillsborough to appeal a 25-year sentence for murder. But he didn't expect to be locked down in an isolation the whole time. In fact, Thomas hates to be in solitary confinement.
In confinement, you see I'm locked up 23 hours a day. In prison, it's open. I can go to and from the backyard to the canteen. It's better than being locked up in a room all day.
It got so bad that Thomas tried to hang himself the night before.
I told him I wanted to kill myself because I didn't like it. I didn't get a shower, no rest, anything, so I stood in the room like 3 days. I've been asking for toothbrush, toothpaste, so I couldn't get none of that. It just, I couldn't take it no more. I couldn't do my time like that. I got a sheet of hunger from the sprinkler in the room. And stood on the sink and waited till the deputy came.
Thomas was put on a 24-hour suicide watch in a separate unit.
Just a deputy sits in front of your door every day, all day, until you get off of it. And just in your room and somebody watching you all day. I can just believe they're not there.
Still locked down, Thomas hopes he'll get better treatment in this unit. But deputies will keep watch, just in case he tries to hurt himself again. Inmate Chris Trott insists he wants to play by the rules, but he seems unable to stop himself from collecting contraband.
This is like my bed, right? Most people have a black wool blanket, but I kind of got this cotton blanket because I've been here so long. It's usually prescribed by medical, but again, I beat the system and got one from somebody that was leaving.
He has a history of harboring more serious contraband, like cigarettes and marijuana. For Trott, the trick is hiding it.
Your pillow's always a good hiding spot because they don't really check your pillow. Inside of your mat, see, I got all these extra sheets too. That's a lot of contraband. You can cut your mat open somehow and stuff inside of your mat. And just, I mean, this is a brand new mat, so I don't really want to cut it because then I'll lose all the air out of it. Inside seams of books, you can hide stuff in. Stick your cigarettes in there, or your weed, whatever you got, you can hide in there. In your clothes, you pull this thread out right here, and this whole section opens up. See? And now I can stick, let's say if I had a lighter, I can hide it right there. If I had a little cigarette or a little bag of weed or pills or anything, I can stick it right there. And then a deputy, most deputies don't grab that spot right there because, you know, that's where genitals are at, so they leave you alone. But that's one of the best places to hide everything, is right there.
Trott says he stopped smoking cigarettes and pot. He doesn't want to compromise his case. He could be put away for life if the judge doesn't like what he sees.
I'm facing all this time. If the judge wanted to give me a chance and he looked at my screen and seen that I got caught smoking pot in here, he'd probably be kind of upset about that or weary to give me another chance. So that's kind of why I'm trying to stay on my best behavior now, and I haven't been smoking pot anymore or cigarettes or anything for that matter. I'm just trying to lay low.
But Trott can't bring himself to give up contraband altogether. For Deputy Gray, contraband is a matter of life and death. It represents a constant threat to the deputies, so Gray and the jail are stepping up their shakedown.
The array of contraband that can be used for weapons is only limited to your imagination, or the inmate's imagination. You just don't take a day off of looking for contraband.
Saturday morning, Deputies have found contraband in one of the nearby men's pods. It's only tobacco, but if tobacco can get in, so can marijuana, pills, and weapons. Now they're going to go back in force and turn it upside down, Garcia among them.
We're doing a shakedown in 1 Delta. We brought in a canine dog. It's a good show of force.
Everybody out, let's go.
You're on your phone, get up. Get your phone.
There's definitely something going on in the pod. This may help us determine exactly what. To the rec yard, guys, to the rec yard, hey.
All the inmates are first moved into the rec yard. With the help of the search dog, Garcia and the other deputies give the cells a thorough going over.
The dog alerted to the desk, so we want to just kind of tear this cell apart.
The shakedown turns up tobacco, but no other drugs and no weapons.
27 to 31.
The inmates are returned in small groups to their cells.
32, 33.
But even with deputies everywhere, there's a threat coming, right at Garcia. As Garcia brings the remaining prisoners out of the yard, one of the inmates makes a remark about the accused double cop killer in the jail, Dante Morris. The deputies consider it a threat. There might be a direct link to Garcia's earlier death threat, so he'll be taken to a holding cell pending investigation. Garcia and Sergeant Vasallo briefed the intel officer.
Tell him what you just told me.
I'm standing out there. I'm the only one. He waited until I was the only deputy standing there, and he decided to tell the guy that was sitting next to him that he was Dante Morris's
But he waited until she was in earshot.
He goes, ma'am, I'm not talking to you. I was talking to my friend. And I said, really? I said, if you didn't want me to hear it, you would have never said it.
Garcia checks out the inmate's arrest record.
What's he in jail for?
Trafficking, trespassing on property, restriction and opposing an officer at 24.
He made an inappropriate comment in reference to an incident that happened recently in the jail that is probably going to require some further investigation.
The incident reminds Garcia of the risks she and all the deputies are facing every day.
You have to be constantly in control of the situation at hand. So you never let your guard down, ever.
You got your cuffs, Trimley.
You get it from 0 to 100 quick.
Hillsborough County Jail. Deputy Gray thinks it's time to do a shakedown of the whole facility to stop contraband.
It's imperative as far as contraband that we find everything that comes in this jail. We learn every way that they possibly can get the contraband in the jail. And if we're missing something, it's imperative that we fix it permanently. And there's no choice there.
Never far from Gray's mind is the murder plot he uncovered less than 18 months ago against officers in a juvenile pod.
This is 2 Delta, the actual pod where the juvenile deputies and my partner and I discovered a murder plot that was about to take place. We noticed some changing in behavior in the pod. They were starting to what we call click up. They were grouping up. We took a couple inmates out. We separated them. So they weren't able to talk and collaborate their stories. And one at a time, we started to interview them in our housing unit office. One interview led to the next, and it was all connecting. It literally led us to the guy that was going to do the cutting of our deputy. This is room 38. This is the room which he stayed. He was pulled out of this room. He was taken to our strip search room. The murder weapon that was going to be used, which was a bunch of razor blades affixed to a handle of a toothbrush, we actually found on the inmate and found extra razor blades inside his cell. It was pretty thought out, pretty methodical, premeditated. The plot basically consisted of 3 names of 3 deputies, literally listed down the line 1, 2, and 3. And if they couldn't get to number 1, they were going to go to number 2 and so forth and so on. I see a name that, somebody that may have been a shift away from having their neck sliced in an escape attempt. That's hard-hitting stuff. That's gut-wrenching.
Once the deputy was killed, the juveniles were going to make their escape.
When I went home that night, I know we had done our job. We saved a life.
If Gray doesn't stay on top of the weapons and the inmates, somebody may die. In the lockdown unit, Chadwick Thomas's suicidal state seems to have lifted. He's out of his cell for rec, which in lockdown means a chance for a little personal grooming and a call to his family.
What's up?
Back in his cell, Thomas makes a surprising confession. He says he didn't really try to kill himself.
Nah, I wasn't really kill myself. I was just acting. So for me being in my room, I couldn't take a shower for 4 days. Then they give me no toothbrush, toothpaste, toilet paper, nothing. So I was like, I got tired of it. What really made me mad was like when the officer came to my door and he gave me a tray. When he left, I was like, sir, I ain't get no bread on my tray. Oh, deal with it. Da-da-da. Okay, that made me mad. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get around here. I already know what I gotta do. You know what I'm saying? I got the sheet. Made it like a rope and I tied it to the fire extinguisher and put it around my neck. I wasn't gonna jump or nothing, but you know what I'm saying? I stood there acting like I was gonna jump.
Thomas faked the suicide attempt so he'd be moved to a new unit where he'd get better treatment.
Since I've been here so long, I know how to, you might as well say, like, manipulate to get, you know what I'm saying, where I need to be. I'm back in the county.
Thomas is still stuck in lockdown, but he's sounding almost defiant now.
Everybody got a lot of time. We struggling back here, but we making it. You know what I'm saying? But we still strong people. They're locked up right now.
In the women's pod, Amber Tackett is about to get some startling information about her extradition to a Tennessee prison.
Hey, it's Deputy Garcia. Did I talk to you earlier about inmate Tackett, Amber Tackett? You guys had pulled a file for me in regards to some information out of her file. Okay, well, would you like to stay on the phone when I tell her this? Because this doesn't happen very often. Ms. Tackett, Tennessee refuses to come get you. You are going to be released today.
Much to everyone's surprise, inmate Tackett is going home to her family.
If I could hug you, I would.
No hugging. She's crying, so you just gave her an early Christmas present, ma'am, okay? You guys can talk to her at mealtime, okay? At mealtime.
Garcia may have spared inmate Tackett weeks of uncertainty.
Yeah, Mom. Mom. You can come and get me. I don't know what time I'm gonna get out, but I get to come home. Yeah.
By Hillsborough County standards, she completed her program and she is now being released. And we would not have known that if we didn't call records today. Feels good?
Yeah.
That is what we call following through. That's what I hope that I hold a rapport with these females or any other inmate in this jail, that when we say we're going to do something, we finish it and complete it, and it usually turns out good.
For other inmates, their stay at Hillsborough may not end so well. Hillsborough County Jail. Inmate Chris Trott says he's found a new way to beat the system with some highly unusual contraband.
I'm going to show you the best piece of contraband in the whole jail right now, all right? This is the greatest contraband ever. Nobody's got contraband like this. I'm standalone contraband on this one right here. Check this guy out. This is my buddy, and he just hangs out with me. Stand alone on this. Everyone thinks I'm crazy for having it. They're like, man, you're gonna get in trouble. Kind of reminds me like a dinosaur. I like him. He's just hanging out.
Later, Trott even sneaks his lizard out to the rec area for some exercise.
I hope I don't get a new charge like animal cruelty or something. That'd be my luck.
What his name?
Rasta.
Rasta.
You see any big ants anywhere, man?
A pet lizard may be harmless, but Trott's flagrant rule breaking may be his ticket right into solitary confinement and an even longer prison sentence. Thursday, 6 a.m. Deputy Gray is ready for the big crackdown on contraband. a preemptive strike to keep the inmates off balance and to uncover drugs and weapons.
It's a sneak attack. It's unscheduled, just to kind of show the inmates that, you know, this could happen at any point, and we'll do a systematic run through of each pod, each housing unit, looking for contraband.
Give everybody a chance to react.
Colonel Privitera, head of Hillsborough, briefs his officers before the shakedown.
Before we moved them from the south end to the north end, we were seeing a lot of homemade weapons. So if you find any contraband, the detention security guys will be here, Gray will be here. If you find something, they'll come and get it. Let's try to handle it as little as possible.
We're getting ready to do a mass shakedown. 10, 12 canines we're going to use today, along with probably 60, 70 personnel.
Surprise is the key, and an overwhelming show of force. Members of the tech squad make their way into one of the lockdown pods, where some of the most difficult and dangerous inmates are kept, including accused cop killer Dante Morris. They will bring each inmate out separately as his cell is searched. Chadwick Thomas watches the shakedown unfold from his cell. Across the way, one inmate uses the shakedown to vent his anger.
This is bullshit, okay? I didn't ask to be over here. I don't want to be in protective custody.
Hey, look at your boys, man.
I don't what? What are you going to do? Put me in the hall? I'm already in the hall.
Now it's Thomas's turn. Deputies search Thomas's cell. It's clean. The officers burst into one of the direct supervision men's pods. The inmates are moved into the rec yard. Among them, Chris Trott. A second-tier cell turns out to be filled with contraband.
So, coffee. Obviously, this stole it from the trustees. Show up in the morning. They're not supposed to have any of this. It's all contraband. Okay, obviously this guy has got some issues following the rules. It's the wristband. They're not supposed to take this off. This is their ID. Picture ID. They gotta have this at all times in the wrist.
Do you see who this is? That's Christopher Trott's identification band that we put on him that you're supposed to have on you at all times. But every so often you'll run into inmates that will literally, you know, soap and water, they weren't put on tight enough and they'll slip it on and off, but completely against facility rules.
This guy had some pad in there. It was obviously given water and everything taken care of him.
It's not unusual, his history. He crosses the line, but he doesn't cross it enough to where he gets, you know, serious trouble.
Right down the edge of the line.
Yes, he likes to teeter, he likes to walk the line.
That's Christopher Trott.
With all the contraband in his cell, Trott may have crossed the line. Thursday afternoon.
Pay attention to the pipe chases and if you're searching cells underneath the sinks.
Officers have completed searching several units in the jail. When Gray's partner, Deputy Camara, discovers one small yet potentially lethal item. A razor blade.
Just found in cell 3, glued under the desk with toothpaste, which is a common hiding method if you don't move the desk or look under the desk. This can be affixed to the handle of a toothbrush and used as a slashing weapon.
They're very easy to conceal, and it only takes a little razor, you know, to cut somebody's throat or something, so they can be very dangerous. So as you can see today, we've only found one. And out of, you know, 5 or 6 pods that we looked through, that's a success.
The entire shakedown yields only the razor blade, a few pills, some homemade alcohol, and some marijuana. But that's a good thing. It tells Deputy Gray that they may be winning the fight against weapons and drugs.
Not a lot of it was found and not a lot in one place, which tells me that the deputies that are working those pods are doing an excellent job in controlling the pod.
Come down and line up, single file.
Inmate Trot didn't have any weapons or drugs, but his cell was crammed with nuisance contraband.
Due to his background and his, his history, he could face up to probably 15 days, 30 days in lockdown, depending on what they want to do with him. He's had a couple incidences here in the last couple months, all the way up to marijuana, and it might be one of those things where they see fit that he spends a little time in lockdown.
Jail is about rules, and Trot seems incapable of following them.
I lost my upstairs room, my good mattress, my good pillow. Now I got a crappy mattress, crappy pillow, crappy roommate. Life sucks.
Trot will find out soon enough if his habitual rule breaking will mean a tougher prison sentence. Despite his efforts to work the system, Chadwick Thomas is still struggling with solitary confinement, so much so that he yearns for prison.
I'm really ready to go back because I don't want to sit in confinement in the box all day. You only get to come out 3 times a week. So it's only like 3 times you get to use the phone out the week, you know what I'm saying? When you're in prison, there's a lot of other stuff you can do. I can walk around, go to the rec yard, play basketball.
Thomas wants to have his appeal hearing and head straight back to the pen. Prison is easier than jail.
Being institutionalized make it easier, really, you know what I'm saying? You can do the same thing every day, so you get accustomed to doing the same thing. So when somebody breaks the cycle, it's like, it off-balance you feel me? Because this is not my regular cycle right here, being in the room, locked up all day, not be able to, like, move how I want to move, you know what I'm saying? He's breaking my cycle.
Bye. Bye, Amber. Bye. Love you guys.
It's time for Amber Tackett to get processed out.
Oh, I won't. All right, Miss Amber Tackett. It was very nice to meet you, ma'am.
It was wonderful meeting you, too.
I'm glad everything worked out the way that it did.
Me, too.
Please do your best, Amber.
I will.
This is your golden ticket out of here.
Thank you.
All right?
Bye.
1 Bravo to an available escort. We have a release in the vestibule. 1 Bravo.
I haven't left jail in the whole 8 months other than riding in the van to go to court. It feels good. I feel really good. Can't wait to get home and hug everybody and sit down and eat a real meal.
Sometimes it works out for the best. And it did today. It doesn't always turn out that way.
For Deputy Garcia, it's been a good day. An inmate helped, and no threats. But as the deputies at Hillsborough County Jail know, their lives are always on the line.
Our eyes can't be everywhere. And we can't be everywhere. You can have a bad day. A good day can turn into a bad day really fast.